Howdy folks, welcome back to Carter Hall Farm.
Welcome to Carter Hall Farm.
This is video 2 of my chicken coop build series. On this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know to build and stand up and secure your walls. Let's get to it. And the first thing I'm going to do is get started on painting the plywood that I'll attach to my stud walls. A lot easier to do this when it's laying flat. So I've always found it's a lot easier to paint in controlled conditions whenever you can. And this is a great opportunity for me to paint all of the T111 inside laying flat, which means, no drips and runs, because I'm putting on pretty heavy coats to get full coverage in 2 coats of paint. And I don't want any drips and runs to ruin the job. That's greatly reduced when you're painting, on a level surface. And I just finished painting this piece. This is number 6, and this is number 7 for the required T111 for our chicken coop project. So I'm going to go ahead and finish painting this piece of T111, and we'll start putting it up on the chicken coop. We chose a bare paint. It's an exterior barn and fence paint in a traditional red barn color. Now I'll put on 2 coats to ensure I've got really, really good coverage. And again, I'm putting these coats on quite a bit heavier than I would interior paint, especially on a vertical wall. And the first coat, as heavy as I'm putting it on, really soaks into this T111. The second coat goes on really nicely. And then once the whole chicken coop is put together, we'll paint it one more time. So that's 3 coats of paint on this T111 siding. And that's really going to protect the siding and the coop for many years to come. Let's go ahead and put the siding on the chicken coop. And the first thing we got to do is build our stud walls. And for this, I'm using interior grade stud lumber and 2x4s for a traditional stud wall. And as we did before in video 1, as we were building the floor joists and attaching the plywood, we're using coated deck screws to attach our T111 plywood siding, and that will give us the greatest longevity as opposed to using a non-coated screw. I also want to point out that it's important to set up your studs at 16 inches on center, because that's going to align with the edges and grooves of the T111 siding. And that makes hiding your screws a little bit easier. Now that we have our wall assembled, we'll rotate it up into place, get it aligned between our corner posts. We'll break out our level and make sure we're plumb, and then we'll attach it with our coated deck screws. As with any project, whether you're building a deck or a shed, or in this case a chicken coop, you want to make sure that at each stage of the process of the build, everything's level. Your floor is level, your posts are level, and in this case, we need to make sure that our wall is level. Everything builds off of this wall and the other walls we put up. So if they're not level, it makes the construction process from this point on a whole lot more difficult than it needs to be. Just take the time and get everything plumb and level.
Very good, very good. Next up, I'm just going to give you a quick review of my hand-drawn plans for this coop. This is the end wall, the wall that will have the nesting boxes attached to them. And this is just to give you an idea of how I designed the coop.
Okay, so this is the framing of our first end wall. Of course, there will be another one on that side. And this framing is what will establish the monitor barn or raised center aisle barn look that we're going for. Now, what makes this one a little bit more complicated is on this end will be our 4 nesting boxes. Now, the nesting boxes need to be 12 inches wide, 12 inches tall, and 12 inches deep. So the way we frame this out is a little bit non-standard while ensuring that these openings were 12 inches as opposed to something just slightly less than that. Now you'll note that we put 2x6s here in these 4 locations, and that will provide us a mounting point when we build out the nesting boxes so we can secure it on the sides and the top and the right side. So with that said, we'll go ahead and put our T111 on. We'll stand this wall up. So I'm standing at the side of the chicken coop that has the 2 large doors that open up. And I designed it that way so that I could just pull my wheelbarrow over, sweep out all of the nesting material and the chicken poop. That's great fertilizer, and it would make for a real easy clean out. The last thing I want to do is have to carry things out in buckets or baskets or something out of a small narrow door on the front of the chicken coop. So the first thing I'm going to do to frame up this wall with the double doors is build a header. Now, I'm going to make this probably way stronger than it needs to be for a chicken coop, but it's not built to code if it were a load-bearing wall in a home or even a traditional header in a home. I'm going to be using 2 2x6s and a 2x4 to span the entire top of this wall, and that'll be just a little bit short of the 2x6s that I'm going to use as stud members. Now I'm doing that because I want to be able to frame up my doors with 2x4s and have them close and have a 2x2 here to give it a nice seal so it's not drafty in the wintertime. Let's go ahead and build out our header.
Now I'm just going to attach some 2x6 studs to my header, and this is our stud wall for this side of the coop. Now you'll notice that I doubled up on the 2x6s at each location. That's just to add strength and rigidity since I'm going to have 2 large doors hanging off of this relatively small wall. Next up, we'll attach the T111 siding.
So we'll put this one on first, and get our 84.25 measurement. Oh my goodness. Here, come on, baby. You can help. Here, you know what you can do, son?
Yeah.
Here, you hand us these screws. Hand one to Uncle A. Sammy, can you get me another screw? I need to. Okay, ready? You push. Okay.
Now we're going to follow the same process of standing this wall up, getting it centered and placed between our corner posts.
All right, what are we looking at here?
We'll attach the bottom sill plate to the floor, and then we'll get it plumb and permanently secure it.
There's a daddy long leg in there.
Okay.
How's that look?
All right. Down. Look at that, huh? Bam. Bam. Bam.
And that's what we're looking for. And this is the start of our fourth and final main wall. There are two smaller walls which we'll build in just a moment that raise up the center aisle of our monitor barn inspired chicken coop.
Like a glove. Yep, perfect. All right, looks like you gotta come in this way a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, you gotta come in about 3/4 of an inch. Yep, that's good.
Is it good?
Yep.
Okay, now that we got all our walls up, I want to pause for a moment and just show you guys the measurements of all the components to this point.
Okay, so our end walls are 6 feet, 72 inches. The lower parts of the side wall are 48 inches, and the top of the raised center aisle is right at 75 inches. This section here is 29.5 inches wide. Now, this wall, this end wall, and that end wall are built identically the same. And again, just to show you here in the dimensions part, our nesting boxes are 12 inches by 12 inches. And then they'll come out a total of 12 inches as well. Our side walls are 88 inches and of course 4 feet high. Side walls come 4 feet off the ground just to stay in line with the lower sections of our end wall. And the opening for the doors is right at 59.25. And that works out to 43 inches tall. So we'll build 2 doors that are roughly 30 inches wide that will open out.
Okay, the last part of the wall building is to construct the walls of the raised center aisles. And this is done very simply by just studding up the wall, attaching the T111 plywood, and setting them in place. And we'll attach this raised center aisle wall the same way we have throughout this build, using our exterior coated deck screws.
That one.
Okay, we have one more wall to build. That's for the other side of our raised center aisle. We'll do that exactly the same way as we did the first raised center aisle wall by studding up our wall, attaching the T111 plywood, setting it in place, and securing it with our coated deck screws. And once we get that last wall in place, we'll use the top portion of each of those raised center aisle walls to establish the slope of our roof line. We'll mark that slope on our 4 wooden corner posts and cut those to length. And that'll bring us to the end of video 2. I hope you guys will stick around and check out video 3 when we'll start installing the roof rafters and building the doors to the coop. Sure hope you enjoyed this video, folks. We'll see you back here next time at Carter Hall Farm.